On this week's The Next Interview with your host Dolan White, you'll hear Sabrina Parsons, Chief Executive Officer of Palo Alto Software, explain exactly how leaders build trust, drive accountability, and create cultures people actually believe in. Don't miss this episode. Listen in on your favorite podcast streaming service today. You're going to want to take some notes.
Most leaders don't realize how much performance they're actually leaving on the table. This is not because their people aren't capable, but it's because everything else depends on them. That's a leverage problem. In Lead with Confidence, I show you how to build a team that owns execution so results scale without adding more pressure. Grab your copy. The link's in the show notes. Now let's get to the podcast. Welcome to the Next Interview Show podcast. I am Dolan, the host of the podcast, as Liam, the announcer, mentioned when we came through the front door. And listeners, for those of you that have been listening to me now for, goodness gracious, almost 100 episodes, I'm blessed because I get to spend my time talking with amazing people. And today is by far no exception. I get to hang out with Sabrina Parsons. And I'll tell you listeners just a little bit about Sabrina. Sabrina is the CEO of a company called Palo Alto Software. And anything with the word software in it is near and dear to my heart because I spent 30 plus years wandering around in that business. So I love talking about technology and software. But the cool thing is that Palo Alto Software is the company behind a product called Live Plan, which is a business planning tool. And leaders, you got to have a plan, and you got to have a really good plan. I'm always amazed when I work with CEOs and I ask them, what are you doing? And they don't know the answer. So you got to have a plan. So go take a look at Live Plan. I'll give you the links and stuff at the end. And by the way, Live Plan has helped millions of entrepreneurs start and grow their businesses. And what's way cool is that you can tell I live by the beach because it's way cool. What's way cool is it's helped the businesses secure over $1 billion in funding. And that's very important for your businesses, is to know how to do that and have a tool and a mechanism by which you can execute against that. Funding is very important. Palo Alto Software was founded by your dad.
Yep.
We'll talk a little bit about that. And you, as the CEO, when I studied you, learned a little bit about you, it was fun to kind of watch your career arc and see that you grew into CEO. It's kind of my first job was I was a chef, but they made me wash dishes for 13 years. They made me wash dishes for 6 months before I was even allowed to touch a knife, which actually turned out to be a good idea because I would have hurt myself. So I really love that. So first thing is, there's 1,000 other places you could be at 8:20 in the morning with me on the Pacific Coast time together. And thank you for stopping your day, taking time to talk with me for a little while and sharing your lessons and the things that we're going to talk about leadership with my listeners. So I'm grateful that you're here. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. This is great. I appreciate you having me on.
Great. Thank you. And we'll see if it's still the same at the very end, but we'll get there. So the listeners haven't met you yet. If you wouldn't mind, I'd love to talk a little bit about your journey, kind of what that has been like, and kind of what brought you to where we are today.
Yeah, it's not really a traditional tech journey. I did not study computer science or engineering. I didn't even really think I wanted to be in tech.
Uh-huh.
I went to undergrad. I went to Princeton, and I got a very traditional liberal arts education. I was a history major, minor in Latin American history, and then I also got a minor in early childhood education. And actually thought I was going to teach. I'm one of the oldest of 5 kids, and so did a lot of babysitting and really just liked being around kids. I was on work study at school, and I found a job at the YMCA at their after school program with kids, and just really thought that I would be a teacher. Graduated, moved to the Bay Area where I grew up in 1996, and taught kindergarten in public school at Sunnyvale, California, while the dot-com was like exploding. I mean, it was summer of 96. My husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, got a job at Yahoo, and he was the 101st employee at Yahoo. So
Come
that's what was
on.
happening summer of 96.
Wow. That's
Um,
cool.
yeah, and so I taught, but sort of just had the bug for kind of the crazy dot-com explosion and was a little frustrated teaching in a public school,
Sure.
middle of the Silicon Valley, and there was no internet connection. I paid for a dial-up myself with my first year teacher salary. The principal at the school would constantly ask me into her office and tell me that I was on my computer too often and she didn't see me at the mimeograph machine enough copying ditto.
Wow.
Yeah, old school.
Wow.
And so for me, it was just like, I can't do this. I love kids. I really have a passion for education, but this
Yeah.
is not for me. I just was itching to get into the dot-com world. So I just jumped in and went from one small email technology company to a company where I was one of the first employees with the founders. And we had $8 million of funding from Benchmark Capital and just sort of
Oh man.
full on Silicon Valley.
Wow. Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and never looked back. And I married my boyfriend, now my husband, who had been at Yahoo. He's a dual citizen of UK, US. So we moved to the UK in 2000 just because we could. And we
Sure.
just thought, we have a lot of dot-com experience in the Valley. We'll go to London, we'll consult, maybe we'll get jobs. And what we ended up doing was opening the UK business for Palo Alto Software and working
Wow.
with my dad, which I had always swore I was never going to do. He would say, "When are you going to come work with me?" And I would always say, "Never. It sounds so boring. Business planning. Who wants that?"
Yuck.
And then after having been in the Valley and been part of companies that didn't plan, didn't really have good direction,
Yeah.
didn't know where they were going, and made lots of mistakes because of it, I sort of started to
Of course.
understand, like, oh, planning is actually pretty interesting and strategic. And so, yeah, we jumped in, both my husband and I kind of took all of the sales and marketing side of things, and I got Business Plan Pro, which was the Windows product, in
Sure.
all the retail big box stores in the UK and Ireland and into Europe. My husband coded the website, the shopping cart. We just sort of rolled up our sleeves and did it. And a couple years later, my dad said, I really need to hire some higher level executives in the US. If you guys were ready to come back to the US,
Right.
I'd love for you to do it. If you're not, I'll hire people here and you guys can keep doing the UK. By that point, we were both 30 and thinking about kids. And so
Sure.
we came back to Eugene, Oregon and jumped in and started helping here, and that was probably '03. And yeah, in '07 he turned over the business to us, and we kind of put our own stamp on it. That's when we transitioned from Windows to SaaS. So that's the journey.
Wow. That's cool. That's so cool. I'll go back to a couple of things that you were talking about. You may see me every now and then jot something down. It's because at my age, if I don't, I won't remember to ask you.
No
So
worries.
so I am taking notes as we go along. No, it's funny. That's cool, Sabrina, because I think that boy, there's so much in there. The leaders, just rewind and just listen to the introduction. There's the lessons in that are awesome. We'll go backwards a little bit. So when you jumped in, kind of made that jump over to it, and didn't really know what to expect and what it was going to be like. I think a lot of people get hung up in those moments where they're not willing to do that because they're afraid to make that jump. Feed
Yes.
that pit in their stomach is like, well, I'm comfortable and I got a check and I'm good. And entrepreneurship is not, we'll talk about entrepreneurship later, but that's not for everybody, right? Because it's not, peaches and cream, sweetness and light all the time.
Nope.
Um, there's things like payroll and other kinds of things you got to worry about. So I'm kind of curious about when you and your husband in the UK of all places, love the UK, by the way, it's such a cool place. Um, we're making that leap. How did you kind of overcome? How did you guys step through that terror barrier, that fear barrier, and say, you know what, we're going to go do this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's a couple of things. And I think when we talk about entrepreneurship, I think there's some similarities. So,
Yeah,
he and I had been working together. We both joined epinions.com, which eventually got bought by eBay. First shopping.com and then shopping.com got bought by eBay. But both of us um, decided to leave our jobs and jump in and help start epinions.com. So we had been working together. Things got crazy. Opinions was like, I remember talking to my dad and my dad saying, I feel like you guys need some adults over there because we were all like 24. We didn't know what we were doing, but we were the young people who knew tech. And so they were
yeah,
just
yeah,
throwing money at us.
yeah,
And it was yeah, I mean, there was a lot of fun things, there was a lot of learning experiences, the culture needed a lot of work, and it just was a recipe for people getting burnt out because it was crazy hours, sleeping under your I mean, just all that crazy stuff you read about Silicon Valley back then.
yeah.
So we left Opinions and started consulting together in the Valley and learning to work together. So I think the two of us together, it's why we made that leap. It's because we made the leap to leave Opinions. And so we had done it once, and then we're very, very different. I am glasses half full. Everything's going to be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Too optimistic. And my husband Noah is definitely the glass is definitely not half full. It is half empty, and there's going to be a death spiral. But he's also much more technically minded. I
Yeah,
am much more of the sales, marketing, sort of, public persona. He's all about lists and process and requirements, and I'm
sure.
all about, big picture vision and, you know, thinking through sort of the big strategies, and it just works. And I think it was the two of us together where I could be the one saying, come on, let's do this. We're young. We don't have kids. We had saved up some money from consulting.
Sure.
And it was like, worst case scenario, we are going to come back. We have money for 6 months. Let's just do this. But then he also brought okay, but let's be organized. Let's do research. Let's figure things out. So I think that is what allowed us to do that. And throughout, he runs Palo Alto Software with me. He and I are the ones who built LivePlan. We've now been working together basically since we were 24.
Yeah,
And I think that partnership where we both bring very different things to the table, but we trust each other, implicitly.
yeah,
I think that is what has, carried us through and helped us be successful. And it's one of those things, I think, when people are thinking about starting businesses and being entrepreneurs, from experience, but also having worked with lots of entrepreneurs,
yeah,
it's really important. Partnerships, I think, work better. And doing something by yourself is a lot scarier. Sometimes you have to do that, and you're going to, but having that right partner in the business world to really, kind of balance it out and be each other's checks and balances, I
yeah,
think that's been kind of the secret to our success.
yeah. I love that, Sabrina, because I agree. I think when you are, um, when you're even as a solopreneur, right? It is to surround yourself with people, even if they're not a partner in your business. Surround yourself with people that are going to challenge your thinking, And you need, we need this. I have my CFO downstairs at the moment. And she reminds me periodically about death spirals and the cup being half empty and those kinds of things. I get those reminders after, she's been my CFO now almost 40 years. So I'm good to go.
Yeah.
But it's funny you mentioned that, because kind of shifting into the entrepreneurial spirit, one of the things that kind of shines through from that is that balance of not only just the partnership and the yin and the yang. We want people around us that are going to challenge us. We have to have that. And leaders, if you don't, go find somebody who's going to ask you what the hell you're thinking.
Yep.
Do that. Ask that. But I'm really kind of curious. So, and not to get into Life Plan, the software, but one of the things I think that's endemic with leaders is there's that entrepreneurial spirit. I'm going to step out. I'm going to figure it out I'm going to figure out how to use a parachute on my way to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they don't find the ripcord, and they don't find the ripcord because there's no plan.
Yep.
So when Imagine as part of what you do at Life Plan is to talk with entrepreneurs, talk with leaders, at least give message with them on, hey, you got to have a plan. What would you tell a leader that's, someone who's not a leader, someone who's going to be stepping out to start a company or go do that, about the importance of that plan? So why the hell does the plan matter is what I'm heading towards.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good question. And, a lot of people think that, right? And when you're starting a business, you have so many things going on, and planning takes time. And it isn't easy. And sometimes it forces you to face things that maybe you're afraid of, right? It's easier sometimes to just close your eyes and, stick your fingers in your ear and hope for the best, like you say, jump out and hope you find the ripcord. But the reality is that the plan is not about like what you actually plan, right? Because you're just guessing. You don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
But it is that process of thinking through that. What are the assumptions? Why do you think this is going to happen?
Right.
What are the assumptions behind how you're pricing things, who you're targeting, how much you're going to sell, what your costs are? So you have certain assumptions. And a lot of times entrepreneurs are like, yeah, I have it. It's all in my head. But if you don't actually map it out and write it down, then as you start actually running the business, you're basically robbing yourself of all kinds of data that can help you make better decisions. So if I plan my business, I have my strategy, I have a target market, I decide on pricing, I put together a forecast, and then I start running my business, as I bring in my actual results and I compare them to my plan, most people will look at, okay, what happened? Let's look at our P&L. What happened last month? And that's a set of numbers. But if you have, what did I plan to do? And what did I actually do? It allows you to have an extra set of numbers, right? Now you have a variance.
Right.
And now you start asking yourself questions, why didn't I sell as much? Or why are my margins not what I thought? And you can actually start digging in and then make decisions. So you can decide like, oh, wow, I need to change my pricing, or I didn't realize this group of customers that I didn't really think were my target, they're the ones who are coming in. I better change my marketing. It allows you to, those assumptions give you something to basically check up against and say, was I right? Was I wrong? And now I'm going to turn knobs and make decisions because I have an extra set of data points. And that's what people don't totally see, that it's not about the plan, right? It's about the process of the planning.
Right.
Then the stepping back and examining and reviewing and understanding the variance and then making decisions based on it.
Yeah, I love that, because I think there's so much to unpack in that. Love that, Sabrina, because I think as a leader, when you're running a business, And whether you're a solopreneur, running teams, running a large team, whatever you're doing and running that business, the plan has to, it's that structure, it's that framework. And always one of my favorite things to tell executives when I coach them is the more detailed you make that plan, the more specific you make the plan, the more God's going to laugh at you.
Yes. Yep. We talk about that when we work with people, where we say, because there's comfort in like details and specificity sometimes. And so people get wrapped up into it and they can't let go of it. But so I always like to tell people, so you're in today, and if you're doing accounting, you're going from today backwards in ever increasing amounts of detail, right? Because that already happened and you know that. And that is very detailed. When you're going forward with ever decreasing amount of detail. And you have to sort of understand that what you're trying to do is put yourself on this path with the right amount of detail, because 10 years from now, we have no idea, right? I mean, these days with how fast everything's moving, and if you're technology these days and with AI and everything happening, we barely know what's coming 6 months from now.
Right.
So doing a ton of detail in a plan 5 years out doesn't really do that much for you. It's about these sort of big swaths of plans that you're doing so that as things happen, you have the ability to compare to what you thought versus what happened. It's not about, I'm going to be right. Because I tell people, if you're going to be right, don't start a company, go trade stocks on the stock market. If you know what's coming, if you know the future, then be a stockbroker and you'll make lots of money. But most of us don't know the future. And so, you're making the best guesses, but the guesses then give you information to be a better, leader, basically.
Sure. Yeah, I love that, because I think that's important. And if there is a, I want to maybe kind of talk about two sides of that plan. I used to tell my team, as a CEO of a marketing company for several years and had a blast. And I would tell my team all the time that what you're hoping is that when I'm making the plan that I'm right 50% of the time. And that 50% of the things that I'm right about actually work out. Because if we can get down to that level of performance, we're good. We can get there as long as we've got everything else under control. So I love the fact that, in talking about the fact that the plan is the structure. So two things came out of what you were just talking about. And I'm never going to get to the questions I had planned. So, but the first thing is, when you're talking to people about planning, leaders, go back and listen to Sabrina's statement. Go back and hit that rewind button on your device, on your phone, because you're all on your phones. Go back and listen to that statement about information. Going backwards, it's only going to get more and more and more and more and more. And going forward, it's going to get less and less and less and less and less and less. So I'm curious, when you're just your insights as a CEO, because you run a very successful, long living software company, and you've made a couple of successful leaps in your business. When is enough to plan? When's enough?
That's a great question. I think that for me, so there's a couple of things. I think that on the numbers side, I always, and I do it. I mean, we eat our own dog food at Palo Alto Software at Live Plan.
Good.
I think that, you have to balance the planning with the action, right? And so you have to have, what are we doing? How are we moving forward? And as you run a business and you know it more and you're in that industry and you're understanding, I think your strategy becomes less detailed. It's about positioning. It's about target market. We run with the idea of OKRs, so that you really have, teams that know what are the company's overall goals, right? And then what are those key results to achieve those goals? And then every team can then do the same thing. We try to keep it to no more than 3 for the company and then for each team, because it gets too overwhelming. We plan quarterly. And then as we get to the end of the quarter, we can assess, what did we accomplish? What did we not accomplish? Why? Are we going to keep moving forward? Do we have to pivot? So you're not spending so much time planning, right? But enough so that everybody knows what direction they're going in. What are you trying to reach? What are the metrics? I think you always need to know your KPIs, right? What are you measuring? For a SaaS company, we are always looking at, what is our churn? What is our lifetime value? What is our ARPA, right? Average revenue per account.
Yep.
And then what is our CAC, customer acquisition cost? And those are the 4 super important things. So those are always front and center every month. How did we do against those? And anytime we're thinking about overall company goals and key results, they're all trying to move those key metrics in the right direction.
Yeah, I love that, because that clarity. And by the way, I really love your comment, Sabrina, around keeping it small. Keep it to 3. A lot of companies I've worked with and been in, or stepped into the door of to lead teams, there's 10.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like, oh my goodness gracious, kids, you can't do 10.
No.
You can't. And as a human, and you probably saw that, we'll get into your child psychology a little bit here, but it's kind of like with my kids, where we were talking about raising kids before we hit go, right? When I would tell my sons, I'd give them a list of 6 things to do. Here's Saturday morning, we're going to do this, 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 this. None of it got done.
Nope.
Nobody knows where to start, right? And nothing was specific. I would forget to tell them which son had the task. So too many things going on. It's funny how those lessons raising kids end up inside of your body, your company, going, okay, here we go. This is what we're going to do.
Exactly.
So how do you blend? I love the comment around, OKRs and KPIs and leaders. If you're listening to this and you don't know what an OKR is, send me a note and I'll tell you what an OKR is. But as you're building these, one of the podcasts, as I was stalking you before we got together to talk here, was you were talking about culture. You did a podcast, and the podcast focused specifically on culture. And culture is extremely important. There's a bunch of dynamics. And I wrote down what you said, actually typed it out on a note here, that culture is shared beliefs, values, and practices. And really like that statement, by the way. That's very close to what I talk about with culture. But what's the balance with OKRs, KPIs, and meetings, and numbers, and all the hoo-ha that, all the blah, blah, blah that goes on in running a business? Yep. That's a very technical term, blah, blah, blah. With that culture, because I think there has to be a personal attachment, right? Culture is is those things that you talked about, right? Shared beliefs, values, and practices. How do you kind of keep those aligned so that there's now meaning to those OKRs and there's purpose to those and inspiration? How do you balance that? Because everybody's going to interpret that differently.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, number one, I think that it's really important for leaders to be very, to articulate and be purposeful with their culture. And the culture will actually oftentimes help drive those OKRs, objectives, key results, like that. It'll drive that. So the first thing, because it's shared beliefs, right, is, well, what is our mission as a company? Because you want employees that believe in the mission. At least that's what we run, a mission-based company. Our mission is to help people succeed in business.
Good.
A very simple one. It is people focused, but that's what we want to do. And so at the end of the day, everything we're doing, even at that OKR level, at the company level, at the department level, you should always be able to ask yourself, is this helping people succeed in business? So that premise that runs through everything. Are we helping people succeed in business?
Love that.
And it helps them make all of our decisions, right? And the morals and the values we bring to it. We don't want to trick people into paying for our software if they're not using it, right? As a SaaS company, you get some revenue from people who buy and forget. And
Yeah,
we
of
get that.
course.
And, and it's going to happen. And we know that that happens. But we would prefer to have customers who are better off after they buy our software, because we want people to succeed in
Awesome.
business. And if they aren't using LivePlan, then it's not useful to them. And then we're not succeeding in our mission. And so
Right.
that's where culture and sort of your OKRs, your goals, your KPIs, I think that's where they come together.
Right.
And that's where you can say, are we authentic or not? Can we go back to that overall mission of what we're trying to do here? Does that, can you answer that question? Does this help people succeed in business? And if it doesn't, then we're off from the culture and we bring it back.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's really important, because I think a lot of companies get hung up on, the numbers are what drives it, right? Which in part of it is, I think part of it sometimes, Sabrina, there's a miss in the fact that if you have a clear destination, you have a culture. And I love that your mission is to focus on helping companies succeed. And I probably butchered that, but to paraphrase it,
Yeah.
but if that's part of it, then and you're truly living into that, then the numbers kind of take care of themselves.
Exactly. And then the numbers have more meaning and people believe in them more. And, and then we are very purposeful when we hire, that we tell people you have to have a passion for entrepreneurship and, small business and helping people succeed in business. And if you don't have that passion, then maybe this isn't the right place for you.
Sure. Yeah, that makes good that's a good choice, because I think a lot of times when we have people, and one of the things you were talking about in one of the interviews was fit.
Yep.
Right, for people to, and sometimes it's a mystery around it. You were leaning in. I loved your conversation, not to paraphrase your conversations again, but kind of, you love the conversation around, sometimes the resume looks good, smells good, tastes good, and there's no fit.
Yeah.
And you find yourself in this position where you now have that person in the organization that's, I don't want to call them a bad apple, but it creates that tension and turmoil that you don't need created.
Exactly.
So when you're kind of in this mode, I think, to kind of evolved a question I wanted to ask you around that. I think sometimes as an entrepreneur, as businesses grow, there's multiple seasons of a business, right? And as a business grows, and in particularly when you are under a pressure, right? Well, you and I have seen some really neat pressures in our career. We've gone from, mini computers to desktop computers to everything runs on the desktop. It's a floppy disk and you install it, to software as a service. And same thing, listeners, if you need to know about floppy disks, I'll send you a picture. Send me a note. I'll tell you what that is. And dial up. I'm going to insert a dial up tone into this episode just so people know what dial up sounded like at 300 baud. But as you're kind of making these jumps, how do you as the CEO of the business, you and your husband, and you're co-running the business together, kind of balance, well, if this is the shift, right? Because tomorrow the business will be again different tomorrow morning, right? How do you recognize fit? What am I looking for? And do I have the right people? It's the E-Myth question, probably. Right people on the bus, or what are we doing? How are we evolving? Because it's not about churning people out of your business, because we want longevity.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
we really want that. But how do you balance that desire for that with the OKRs and the culture and the destination with where you need to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that it is something you have to be doing every day, right? And I think that's something that not all leaders realize. To have a culture that is what you want, it is work every day. You can't just put a whole slide deck together and say, there you go, and then never look at it. right? You can't just have your culture deck. You have to be very purposeful
Yeah.
about what does that mean. And so some of the things that we do is we make sure we have 6 tenets of our culture, and we make sure that we're always true to them, and we make sure that anyone who works for us can hold us accountable to that culture. And if there's something that's happening that they feel like, well, this doesn't sound like our culture, that they can bring that to us. And so the key pillars of our culture is we rely on data, right? And it doesn't matter what the business changes tomorrow. If you understand that data is important and data can help you make decisions,
Right.
we solve for the customer, meaning we want the customer to be better off. We make good decisions for the customer. That's number 2. We're transparent. That's number 3. We want to tell our employees and give them as much information as possible. And that goes up to number 1, that we rely on data, right? You can't rely on data and then not be transparent.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a really good point.
So that, that helps, right? And then
Right.
again, doesn't matter how things change tomorrow, because we're being transparent, we're giving you data, we're solving for the customer. We say that number 4 is we give you the autonomy to be awesome. That means we don't micromanage, and that we're okay with asking for forgiveness and not permission. We want people to do things and run with them. And sometimes you fail and sometimes you succeed. And as long as you can, set things up so that you understand, why did this test fail and what can we learn from it? And you are transparent, then everybody learns.
Right.
So that one, it's like we've got the data, the customer, we're transparent. Now we're giving people agency to use their brains and be smarter than us. The number 5 pillar is we're picky about our peers, meaning we want to hire people who are smarter than us. We want to hire interesting people. We want to hire people who are passionate.
Sure.
And that helps them not be afraid to have the autonomy to be awesome.
Right.
So each one of them sort of kind of supports the other tenants. And then the last one is we value community in our business and in the town that we live in. We volunteer regularly. We have a grant program where we fund nonprofits, and we give every single employee a half day a month they can use on us to volunteer in a business.
Oh, fantastic.
Or in a nonprofit or at their kids' school. We don't care. You get 4 hours a month and we pay you, and you can go out and volunteer in the community. So that's those key pillars. If you're true, for us, they work. We have found that our employees are very happy. They are passionate about what they do. We retain people. But then these are also people who aren't afraid of change, right? Because they are smart. They don't want to be micromanaged. They want to have the autonomy to be awesome. And so no matter what the world throws at us, our employees are ready, and they're the type of person that's going to roll up their sleeves and be like, all right, let's do this.
That is so cool. I love those tenets, because it just is, especially with ending in go do something that matters to you.
Exactly.
Go do something that's important to you, and we got your back. We'll cover your time. Go do that. I think that's a really powerful thing, Sabrina, and that's a rare thing, by the way.
But think about it, because people say that all the time. How many tech companies, they're like, we have a keg in our break room, and we have, the latest game consoles and a pool table, and those are the benefits they're giving. And we have found that giving the benefit of, we give you back your time so that you can volunteer and give back, that people value that more than the keg in the break room.
Yeah, love that. Go be with your kids. I remember. Harken back to the Silicon Valley days, walking into several Silicon Valley companies, and there's a foosball table, and that's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
We have a foosball championship every Thursday night and free beer. It's like, okay, that doesn't get you where you need to be, but that's kind of cool. So that's
And really, what all of those companies are doing, and people realize that now, and I think that millennials have rightly called us out on all of this. What those companies are trying to do is keep you at work longer, right?
yes.
It's not
Oh yeah.
really about, oh, we're doing it for you because isn't foosball fun? No, they just want you at the office for as long as possible.
Right.
And that's what they're trying to do with those benefits, right? They're
Yeah.
not actually caring about how are you feeling. They're saying, let's do everything we can so people never leave.
Right, exactly. You go to places, several campuses, and I won't mention companies by name, Google, Apple, Broadcom, Symantec. You go to the campus and there's, daycare and there's laundry and there's a gym, and those are awesome things. But the design is awesomely never leave.
Exactly.
You're here all the time.
Exactly.
We're going
Yep.
to get I used to call it, we're going to get our money's worth, or what have you done for me lately kind of a scenario.
Exactly.
So we are, I warned you, we're at the unelegant ending of the podcast. A couple things, I just as before we wrap up. The very first thing is, and thank you for such a rich conversation. This has been listeners, go back and listen to this podcast again. Couple things. The very first thing is, listeners, I want you to go to lifeplan.com and take a look at LifePlan. Leaders, go do that. And leaders, if you are mid leaders, directors, VPs, inside the body of an organization, and your company does not have a plan, go look anyway and learn, and then help make the suggestion that we might want to get a plan, right? Because your livelihood depends on that, which means you take care of your family. One, maybe just for a moment, the kind of maybe the final thing is, there's a lot of, I think, fear, uncertainty, and doubt around impact of AI inside of businesses and all the stuff that's going on. And I read an interesting article this morning about ChatGPT was now embedded in the supercomputers at Alameda, and they were, where they make H bombs and stuff like that, and had the Manhattan Project. So they were concerned that we were building Skynet, which I had to smile and kind of go, well, maybe, I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah.
So I'm really kind of curious of just, and not so much from an impact on the development as you're going, because you went from desktop to SaaS, and then AI is going to obviously play a role. But I loved your comment around data, and one of the tenets about being a data-driven organization. Sometimes I think AI can in that fear, uncertainty can put a little ding in culture, right? Because people don't understand AI well enough, or haven't gone to figure it out. Maybe the last question is just kind of how are you kind of helping manage that integration, not from a technological perspective, but from a people perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that we have done is really just encouraged our employees to use AI as much as possible in all their lives. And, we pay for, premium accounts for employees and lots of different AI tools.
Sure.
And we don't really care what they're using it for. We're not trying to have them justify why they need the $20 a month premium membership. We actually
Awesome.
want people to use it, but not just internally, everywhere in their lives, because it gives them a better sense of, the changes, what works, what doesn't work.
Gotcha.
What are the places where AI goes wonky and doesn't do what you want, and
Yeah.
just keep up on it, because it's moving so quickly. I mean, you've been in tech for a long time.
Yep.
I've never seen behavior change so quickly than in the last year. I mean, it is absolutely crazy how fast, not technology adoption, but I think the change in behavior.
Yes. Yeah.
And so we're just embracing it for our employees by saying, use all the tools, we'll pay for it. And we don't care. Like, I don't care if you pay for a tool and it turns out you're using it at home to plan travel. It allows you to immerse yourself in this new world and what is AI and what are the capabilities. And then you can bring that to your job, to the product, to processes you do internally. But you just have to be able to like immerse yourself because it's just moving too quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that as advice because it does come down to, I think a part of it, just from that perspective, Sabrina, it's just an opportunity. Go get comfortable.
Yeah.
Just go goof around with it. Don't, because there's episode 2. We'll do an episode 2 to talk about the psychology and the impact of computing.
Yeah.
But I love that because that it is that comfort where then it inspires the what ifs kinds of questions.
Exactly.
What if we could do that? What if we could accelerate or attain velocity?
Yep.
I call it escape velocity. That last couple of miles with Artemis launched yesterday, so I was happy to see us going back to the moon. But anyway, we completely digress. So a couple of things. The very first thing is as we started the podcast, there's 1,000 other places you could be, and you have other responsibilities, and you hung out with me for way more than I promised you we were going to hang out for. So I just want to tell you thank you and extend some gratitude for being here. This has been a really good conversation, in your comments around planning and OKRs and then aligning them with culture and then giving people permission to go do something and invest in themselves, go volunteer, go do this. And the tenets you've built with your organization at Palo Alto are powerful. So I just want to tell you thank you for being here and thank you for taking time to hang out with me and just have a cup of coffee together in the morning.
Well, thank you. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate it. It's been so much fun to talk to you.
Thank you. All right, leaders, 2 things, and then we're out. The very first thing is give the podcast a know, like, share, or follow. It has nothing to do with vanity numbers, please. It has to do with how algorithms work, and it makes the podcast visible. The reason the podcast needs to be visible is it serves my mission, which is to empower 1 million leaders. Speaking of missions. And if you learned something today from Sabrina, I'm going to challenge you. Move the podcast from entertainment to action. Get a pencil and paper and go try something. Test something that she talked about today. Go to lifeplan.com. Look at LifePlan. Have a plan and a strategy for your business. Invest in that. Don't go to AI and say, hey, build me a business plan, because it doesn't work well. Trust me. Yeah. And I trust Sabrina shaking her head if you're watching the video on YouTube. No, don't do that.
No.
Please. And then if you know a leader who is struggling with their business and could use a little reset, share this podcast with them, please. We're all on the hook to help each other be better leaders. As better leaders, we take care of our companies, we take care of our families take care of our friends. We see people accomplish their dreams. That's how we empower people. I'm Dolan White. Thank you for watching or listening to the Next Interview Show podcast. I will see you next Tuesday. See you then.
Thank you, Dolan.
Thanks, Sabrina.
Thanks for listening to this week's The Next Interview Show podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and then take time to turn what you heard here into action.